First, a disclaimer. What I am giving you here should not be taken as new categories or borders. People made those old categories to try and separate art. But others take these categories and use them as law, or take them and hold them over others, or at worst, as an awkward and foolish attempt to grasp these stories. Ironically, this destroys the very same story and its understanding in the process. As I've said before, I reject this failure. Art is not so simple. Art is an evolving thing. These machines change fluidly. Their stories change. They exchange the DNA of their stories freely, the aspects of their characters and their vehicles. All I am giving you here is a view into one area of the landscape of how these machines are shaped and designed, and the stories that they take place in. Just one angle. Change what you are looking for, and how you look for that, and the landscape shifts entirely. So long as others limit themselves by focusing on only these imaginary borders and categories, their minds will be restricted, and they will always fail to understand because they deny shifting complexity of the stories and the worlds they supposedly champion, these characters and these machines. Hopefully now you will know how not to make their same mistake. And so we can proceed. This group is one I don't need to think about so much, because, like so many styles of mecha, I think I can just feel it. As a style of mechanical design, this group also expresses mass, one of the principles I mentioned last time, but does so very differently from the super heavyweights, obviously enough. Whereas they are walking castles of steel, these machines are the descendants of the genetics of jet fighters being imbued into mecha. The transformation of those machines running back to the thrust-vectoring engine nozzles and swing-wing airframes. Macross, one of the founders of this style, has its variable fighters even get its name from that same feature. Variable geometry, the shifting shape of real-life jet planes. Elements like the F-15's moving intakes, or the Harrier's vertical takeoff and landing nozzles and thrusters. This mechanical language of transformation was inherited into mecha. Through some names you should remember I have mentioned before. Mechanical designers like Shoji Kawamori, who took this jet shape and language and imbued it into machines. And animators like Ichiro Otano, who took those forms and combined them with their personal understanding of flying machines, to craft the living, moving forms of this new generation of mecha. Of course, one of the biggest things to get with this style of approach is its rhythm and tempo, momentum and timing. These machines are not just pure speed. You need to give the audience time to perceive and read that action. Missiles need to fire in huge swarms to impress the audience with numbers, but then they need to show that wave of danger or attack as a readable cloud of threat. There has to be a back and forth to the action and its fighters. An ebb and flow, a wind-up, impact, and wind down, to explosions and combat and flight. As fast as you make things, they need to be readable by the audience, or all that detail is just going to be more or less wasted. And by now, you should see how high-tempo music is not coincidentally linked to these machines. In a way, it's just the acoustic expression of the same movement of that animation. a veritable dance through the skies. And while I know a portion of this form is also used in space, when it is used there, it's still ultimately using its jet language to do so. It is not a spacecraft with the body of a jet, it is a jet mecha which is banking through space. In this way though, the style of mecha have all this freedom from both kinds, from both worlds. They are double dipping into the whimsical power of the magical super technology, while also being imbued with the body and DNA of flying machines in their materiality. And no, before you even ask, none of these things are really any closer to reality or realism than DESIGN-3 was, or the super heavyweights. They would be mechanical nightmares to even begin to think about engineering. But just the same, that realism doesn't really matter. If anything, that makes them so wonderful. It's just that, the impossible grace and power that they have to change shape and carve through the skies. They are a window into a world where all our flying power is pushed just past the reality of what limits it in real life, where they can now take on our humanoid form to become something much more. I hope you enjoyed this much more direct outing. Sometimes it helps to say much less than say much more. Sometimes things are just better simply felt than known, and I think this group is very much one of those. Next video will involve IBM and the band T-Rex.